What's up, everyone? Welcome to my corner of the internet. I'm your host, Ryan Cramer, and this is Crossover Commerce, presented by Ping Pong Payments, the leading global payments provider helping sellers keep more of their hard-earned money. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Crossover Commerce. I'm your host, Ryan Cramer, and this is my corner of the internet, where I like to call Crossover Commerce, presented by Ping Pong Payments. And before we go ahead and get kicked off today, just want to give a quick shout out to our presenting sponsor, Ping Pong Payments. Ping Pong Payments is helping people save more time, money, and effort on their international cross-border e-commerce. Whether that's paying out your suppliers, manufacturers, or distributors, you're going to be able to save more money and put it to your margin by using Ping Pong Payments. It's free to sign up. Just go to usa.pingpongx.com/podcast to watch all past episodes, as well as sign up for a free account today. Just go ahead and do that. The links are in the show notes below. Just go ahead and, with your comments, because this is live, go ahead and sign up later, because this is an amazing podcast. You don't want to miss a single moment of that. But with that being said, welcome everyone who's watching us live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, as well as Twitter. Let's not leave out Twitter, even though the CEO is leaving and stepping down effective immediately. With that being said, we are going to have a great episode for you today. So if you are kind of coming off of that turkey high, or that Thanksgiving high, or if you're around the world and you're just celebrating the beginning of Hanukkah or whatever celebration you're starting with, we appreciate you spending some time in my corner of the internet. That being said, what's it been like for your holiday season thus far? If you're an Amazon and e-commerce seller, that's what we like to talk about with Amazon and e-commerce experts on this podcast. And we'll be talking about the future of that. And we actually dictated the beginning of this episode and the title of what it's called: Keys to Winning Among the Next Generation of Digitally Native Marketplace Brands. So if you are a marketplace brand, you're selling on the likes of Amazon, you're on D2C website, how are things going so far? Just let us know in the comment section. We would love to know and see what kind of struggles. Was it as expected? Was it lower than expected? Higher? Just about the same? On par? There's lots of different things. We'd love to hear from you, the audience member, if you are listening today live. That being said, our episode, we have an action-packed week. We don't slow down here on Crossover Commerce. And as the end of the year kind of starts to wrap up, we want to make sure that we are talking about all things applicable to brands, but a lot of our past episodes have talked about the future. What is 2022 like? How do you start to plan for that as we wrap up this year? 2021 was unexpected, just like 2020. Learnings from the past year and previous successes. How do we continue to grow and build momentum on that? So again, today we're going to be talking about what's that next wave of next generation of native marketplace brands, and that's starting on the likes of an Amazon or D2C platform. So I brought on the likes of a powerhouse man, if you will. His name is Paul Palmieri of Tradeswell. He's the co-founder. He's the CEO of Tradeswell, and he's going to be talking to us about those keys and keys to building a digitally native brand. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and bring on Paul of Tradeswell. Paul, thank you so much for hopping on Crossover Commerce today.
Hey, it's a pleasure, Ryan. I'm a fan of what you do, and it's exciting to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And again, I just want to publicly apologize. Again, we had scheduled this for next week as well as today, so we were in the pickle of which one we were gonna be on. So that's my misunderstanding. But I'm so glad we were able to make this work and you to hop on today. So that being said, how was I'm going to say holiday weekend, because even though this is a global podcast, how was your holiday weekend for the e-commerce world and the likes of Paul, either personally and professionally? How are things?
Well, personally and professionally, I would say, Thanksgiving is a big weekend for so many reasons. Obviously, getting together with family, but in the e-commerce space, it's a tremendous weekend. There's a tremendous percentage of e-commerce sales that happen in the fourth quarter of the year, and really things kicked off in a very big way for many of our brand partners and our selling partners. So we're incredibly excited to see what's happening through the platform, and it seems to be a pretty robust time.
So you have clients, correct me if I'm wrong. Do you have clients selling on direct to consumer? Like where's the main focus? Like what's your story about Tradeswell, and kind of give us a background on how you got to where we are today, if you will.
Yeah, a little bit of our story. We had built another company called Millennial Media in the mobile advertising space, really trying to get ad revenue to developers very early on. And the core belief we had was that where you have parties that are somewhat economically kind of sitting behind somebody else's business model, or don't necessarily have the ability to kind of set their own destiny, that sometimes platforms, in a way, agnostic facilitators that can be an algorithmic friend to many of those parties, can be a winning story. And we did that with Millennial Media, taking that from zero to a public company in just over 7 years. And tremendous growth there. And with Tradeswell, what was happening was, I'm a venture capitalist. So for my last company, I went into the venture capital space, and we were seeing all of these brands coming out and raising money, commerce brands. And in the early days, very much focused on D2C only. And we also noticed there were some brands that were focused in the Amazon world only. And so they came from very different places. And I began to collaborate with my other co-founders here at Tradeswell about bringing a system together that could help them get some more economic power themselves by utilizing data and AI and insights to be able to have a deeper and deeper understanding of what was going on in their business, and to really have this understanding flow across selling and retailing, but also across marketing and across finance, and to really understand how all of that sort of played together. So that's the core idea behind Tradeswell, is that we're an operating system for real-time commerce. The decisions that have to be made on assortment and marketing and finance are really not monthly or quarterly decisions anymore. They are sort of in the moment type decisions. So, essentially, what we do is we're a data platform and a system of intelligence that brings together the data and insights so that e-commerce brands can stay competitive, become more profitable, and know what actions to take for them to grow.
So a holistic look at where a brand could potentially grow, but also what you're doing, what your competitors are doing, and letting data tell that story. Is that a pretty simplistic way of putting it?
Yeah, that's right. I would say, we're sort of automating a lot of e-commerce operations and insight generation. And you're really doing that from the perspective of, one, taking all of this disparate data from these disparate platforms and normalizing them. There's an ASIN on Amazon, there's a SKU somewhere else, there's a UPC somewhere else, there's an item ID somewhere else. And then you overlay a little bit of what we've been building, which is a product graph, if you will, which is overlaying what keywords am I bidding on, what does my assortment look like, not only on one channel but cross channel, and what is the hierarchy of that assortment from a brand's perspective, from a product category perspective, et cetera, et cetera. And again, just takes this complex bit of a mess and brings clarity and calm to the situation, and provides almost like a single source of truth, so that your head of marketing isn't showing up to the same meeting as the head of finance with two completely different sets of data and two completely different perspectives on what's really happening out there.
Right. Well, and that's where I think where this kind of fits into the ecosystem, right? Is in 2020, there's this glaring, disproportionate look at how people were selling on Amazon in terms of, as a brand, if they were only on Amazon, in the beginning of 2020 when lots of things shut down. There was a lot, Amazon said we only need, for example, if you're a brand on Amazon, and say we only want um, just like for example, like baby diapers or anything like that. We need necessity items. We won't take your fidget spinner or your toys or anything like that. You can't give that into our warehouse. We need to make sure that this is going to be accessible for people. And that shook a lot of people that you couldn't even get inventory into a warehouse that they're fulfilling through Amazon, which shed a light on the fact of, if I'm not omni-channel, am I truly a brand? And am I protected in the nature that if something like a marketplace like Amazon happens to shut me down, whether it be for inventory issues or just issues of my listing, or someone hijacks me and something of that nature, but then I can still operate as a brand on these other channels. A lot of people took a moment and said, you know what, I need to start becoming this well established across the board instead of depending on one source as well. So that's why I think that interweaving the data and making sure that people can connect these is super important for brands to grow, not just on their most popular platform, but beyond. And that's where I think the future will grow for lots of different companies. Is that what you and your team are seeing as well?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing that as well, and I think the age old challenge of being, even in brick and mortar, being in more retailers is just better. Even if there's one that's somewhat dominant, you kind of look at it not as the great giver and the great taker away, but rather, sort of a great enabler. So we see Amazon as a great enabler, but we see other channels as having great promise as well. And whether that's consumers who are in much more of a verticalized or niche, sort of an area looking for specific assortments or specific expertise, or whether whether there are emerging channels that are, can be incredibly exciting, that are much more marketing oriented, like the socials, for instance. So, I think, yeah, so I think we definitely are seeing that, and we definitely have been seeing a difference in how brands are looking at going to market from an e-commerce perspective. Gosh, it wasn't more than 3 years ago that that what was cool was to be the one woolen shoe company, one eyeglass company, or two mattress companies that did it all via direct to consumer, and marketplaces weren't at all in the picture. And so you fast forward to today, you've had, for instance, 10 or 12 billion dollars that's gone into funding aggregators of FBA sellers and brands, and you can see quite clearly the impact that a digital first marketplace brand multi-channel strategy really has out there. So incredible
Absolutely.
validation of that, for sure.
You are speaking my language, and I think that's what a lot of people. So when they enter the space too, and I'm curious on your thoughts too. That kind of goes hand in hand. Of you saw lots of money again, over $12 billion, especially for digitally native brands. Again, a lot of people were focusing on just the Amazon genesis of it, but now you're starting to see that kind of go across the board of, maybe if it's on off of Amazon, how do I get it on Amazon, or vice versa? And to kind of have that omni-channel approach of, you said lots of different brands that built up this establishment. Like what do they actually know? A brand is something that is known for either its name, its product, or how it makes you feel, right? The very basics of it. A lot of people said, if I look at this widget that I'm selling on Amazon, will I know that by its name? And that's not always necessarily true, but you see the likes that Anchor or Zesty Paws or things like that, where they start and then they start to go into their own direct to consumer approach and then into retail. Those are the ones where you start to think, oh, I get it now. A brand is something that has all these different avenues as well. So is there a way that you've seen that more brands be successful, or does it just truly depend on the product, the service, whatever you might be offering? Does it just honestly just depend on what you want to put your full focus on, and then start to build those additional channels? What do you see in your history and your expertise that's not the right way to do it, but where a lot of people are successful in?
Well, I think first off, it's important to be successful. And many brands feel like they should do sort of one at a time. And so, go into a channel, whether it's starting on D2C or whether it's starting on Amazon. And you often have, the world is somewhat bifurcated into those two starting points. And I would say that there are some pretty traditional patterns that happen in each of those areas. But I think, whether you're on Amazon and you're trying another marketplace and you're, getting involved with Walmart, that's been making incredible strides over the past 12 months. And, even more specifically over the last 6 months, you really have to go then one further and be successful, and then add the next and add the next and add the next. From the consumer direct side, I think your choices are all about how do you scale. Right. So oftentimes we see brands that begin in Amazon. They're very sure how to sell. They're very sure about return on ad spend, which is looking at their ad spend and looking at the top line sales, and don't necessarily have as much awareness of what the bottom line net margins look like. And then if you go the opposite side, which is enter from consumer direct first, we often see an extreme level of information that's handled on a day-to-day basis about profitability, but yet don't necessarily know how to scale. Brands not necessarily knowing how to scale through marketplaces and how to really sort of think through that. And so that's one of the things that bringing your data together, owning that data and intelligence by putting it into and through a platform like Tradeswell, it's going to give you actionable insights to help you scale, to help you be more profitable, and to help you just in general navigate the overall situation. But we had a lot of questions about, what are e-commerce executives doing that's a little bit different today? How have things changed over the past few years? And so we set out to do some research, and we've published a bit of it, and we'll share the link here in a report called The Future of Empowered Commerce. We went out and surveyed 300 e-commerce decision makers, all of them full-time, either in the either CPG or non-CPG, big companies, small companies, Amazon first, direct-to-consumer first. And we brought a bunch of that data together in a bit of a report. But, reality of the situation is e-commerce is becoming more complex. Nearly 6 in 10 e-commerce professionals say e-commerce is getting more complex. 95% of those we surveyed say that now they're selling in 2 or more online marketplaces. So it's a huge, huge change from just a few short years ago. And we also see e-commerce brands ramping up their internal teams. So a lot of managing e-commerce has been done through agencies over the last 5 or 7 years or so. And you see more and more desire to bring some of these things in-house, at least the expertise and the knowledge around the data and some of the insights around the business.
Right. And to everyone that is listening or watching as well, we referenced Paul, and you can get access to that special report at the tradeswell.com/empowered-e-commerce as well. And you just sign up and it's a free download to be able to look through it. Also, those are definitely actionable insights. And the things I initially hear from those findings that you said, Paul, is it's harder. Like, it's not as easy anymore as finding a product, throwing it onto a marketplace like an Amazon, it's overcoming barriers. There's a lot more complexity in terms of the finance that you have to put through to advertise. Amazon recently updated for the first time in a very long time its own terms of service in the seller dashboard of how to drive traffic and how to reward those people, and specifically calling out rebates in the likes of search find buys and a lot of tactics as well. So it's becoming harder and more narrow focus in terms of what Amazon sees as the right way to sell. Again, everything is up to for interpretation, but if you want to play ball, you have to adapt and grow. So for you, seeing all these changes and kind of the narrowing of these kind of alleys, does it make you second guess yourself for brands when they're saying, I want to launch on either D2C or Amazon? Does that make you tend to go more one way or another? Or again, does it just depend on in those notions? Is it going back to, honestly, it's hard to tell, or just do both and kind of like grow them together?
I mean, I think certainly our advice is to start with both. And, it's multiple opportunities to sort of get after it. I think in both situations, you have to be very aware of who your competition is. You have to be very aware of understanding price and promotion. And you do have to become a bit of an expert in taking advantage of things like subscribe and save, taking advantage of opportunities to create lock-in with consumers, so that it's not just the first and last product purchase that a consumer has as an experience with your brand. So there's a lot that has to be remembered, but for us, our advice is you really ought to be there should be a direct-to-consumer component of your strategy, and there should be a marketplace component to your strategy as well.
Right. Well, for you guys too, there's so many different platforms to choose from too. Like if you're going to direct to consumer route, there's BigCommerce, there's Shopify, there's all these different platforms on which to build and kind of stay with as well. You can even sell socially through social commerce. There's lots of, when we were talking about this pre-show, there's just so many different ways to get your product in front of people. How do you come about choosing or directing brands to choose which platform that's going to best suit them? Is it simply going through benefits or key components of what you're coming out? Like what's that natural progression like with you in that conversation?
I mean, in a way, it's really we're there to support the brand. So whatever it is that they choose, we're there to support them. I would say there are some dynamics across the various direct-to-consumer platforms that have bearing on price flexibility, price regionality, and things along those lines that sometimes come into play. Whereas, things that are much more simple in terms of a sale, you might favor one platform over the other. But the reality is, whatever our brand is using or wants to use, our goal is to get that data in, generate real insight and real instructions on what to do in time for it to matter.
So in that capacity, sorry, I'm taking a little time to think through this, the next step. So in that capacity, have you ever been approached and thought that's, because a lot of people like to have opinionated things and they go down the routes of, that's just a wrong way to build a business. Have you had to, as a consultant company, and they push you down this path of, for a fact it's not going to work out, and you're advising to either depart or go down a different road? What's a conversation like to have with an entrepreneur on a day-to-day basis when it's not going to lead to the results that they want, or you show them the data and they're like, I don't believe that? How do you have a conversation with people or a customer or just a friend when they choose not to believe in just numbers in front of them and they choose to continue down that path, I would say, hey, for example, if I want to grow 5% here, you have to move platforms, or you have to work on your logistics area here, or you have to change with your platform is so robust, right? And to point to so many different things, if they're like, I don't trust that, or I don't think that's right, what's that conversation like if someone chooses not to believe in like a number that you and your team are presenting to them, or the technology itself is pointing to, that you just know it might not work?
Yeah, I would say, I had a funny conversation with somebody the other day that said, I'm not really convinced on e-commerce. I sell a back pain medication, and when someone's back hurts, they don't really need an answer in 2 days, right? And so Prime does them no good. And so it was an interesting thing. This is one of those things where it's an opinion, but not necessarily backed up by the data. For us, we're really there to help them bring their data together and generate insight. Whether they take or action those insights, it's entirely up to them. So, we're a software platform, and we're a software platform that is purposefully taking the human element out of it, and purposefully, utilizing artificial intelligence to be able to generate insight. And from there, they've got to make a choice and see what it is that they should do. Now, the good news is they're able to make those choices where they're seeing everything in one place. So they're not just seeing their Amazon data. They're not just seeing their 1P data, or they're seeing their 1P and 3P. They're seeing their D2C, and they're seeing it all, sort of together, so they can compare and see what's working where.
What about so in that regards, because e-commerce is kind of all over the place, a lot of your company is so fascinating too, because it can talk about just product itself and like the opportunity for product, but then it can talk about marketing and how to get in front of that potential customer. Because we're talking about the keys for digital brands to be successful, a lot of the conversation kind of stems around how to best get your product quickly and effectively, and for it to be available. And by that, I mean in the logistics and supply chain. I'm curious to hear your thoughts too, for people who are struggling. And I've heard over, especially this time of year, over this weekend, of comments of, my brand, even though it's big enough, we're going to have to absorb a 6-figure loss just because inventory is on the water. Nothing we can control. It's just, it's not unloaded or anything like that. What with Tradeswell is helping people become more successful in that regards of making sure that the goods itself, the basic necessity of my goods are available for you to consume it and to purchase it. That seems like a basics that should start from the key building blocks. How are you guys helping overcome those major hurdles that people have seen in 2021, and hopefully moving forward not encounter those?
Yeah. So what I would say is primarily it's the component of us that is the in time for it to matter piece. So we can't change product that's on the water.
Right.
We can't.
You can't make people move quicker.
We can't necessarily make things move quicker, but we can provide speed to insights and speed to knowing what's going on. And so that's the area where we focus, is being that system of intelligence that's giving you intelligence in the time window that really matters for you.
Right. And using data, I can only imagine that it helps you quickly, as robust as AI, and to continuously learn and see how things evolve. You're going to have to not go on models that are just traditional, right? You can't just do just-in-time manufacturing and distribution anymore. You have to actually, with lead times constantly changing, you have to understand of, am I ordering now for the summer 2022, or am I ordering for fall or spring? It's going to be fluctuating depending on where you're sourcing from, how quickly things are turning around, and just the unforeseen things. So how do you take those data points and help people draw those conclusions? Is it one of the more frustrating things that you and your team have to help people overcome, or what's?
Yeah,
Is this the
yeah.
headache portion of your business right
No.
now?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's a great business. So, and e-commerce is growing, so it's a happy, wonderful place to be. Actually, as all over the place as the data can be, bringing some calm to the chaos is a very, very rewarding thing. But to exactly your question, over the last year or so, um, you know, how did our forecasting models change over this past year when we're showing forecasting in a system around demand? Just because you have out of stock, I mean, some forecasting models are so based on historical sales that just because something's out of stock doesn't mean there's no demand for it. And 2021 is the year that became clearer and clearer and clearer to anyone who's looking at forecasting. And so the piece of our system around forecasting, I think we have evolved over the past 6 to 9 months, and to really anticipate the anomalies like are happening today.
With that being said, is there, and again, I call it this is the moment of growing pains, right? We have e-commerce going through its, albeit young phase. We're still going through those teenage growing pains of it's growing so quickly, like we almost have to switch out our clothes more often than what we want. Frustrating as it might be, but it means that at the end of the day, there's just so much opportunity. Do you see, is this an opportunity? Like you paint the picture of, is this an opportunity for innovation and growth? Or if people can kind of weather the storm and kind of figure out how to work with it instead of trying to go against it, is that more of the picture
Well,
that it's easier to paint?
yeah. So I think, first of all, this past year has provided an opportunity. You got all kinds of things in this past year. The tough comp in certain categories from last year when you had all of this sort of like stocking up in the pandemic, the supply chain crisis. So there's a lot that drove companies to reevaluate their technology stacks, and so we see a lot of that. See a lot of companies having taken the opportunity to reevaluate how they measure what they should be doing. So in this study we did, 85% of these e-commerce decision makers are saying that automatically measuring the impact and effectiveness of channels in near real time is super important to them now. There is a theme around profitability. I think you've seen more than you've seen in years past. So not just growth at all costs or growth at any price, but rather growth with profitability, and an eye on that profitability is a theme that we continue to see. And if people download the research, you'll see that come out pretty strongly.
Yeah, and I just did, and I have it on my docket to read a little bit more even after this. Super easy to download too, and I'm just going to tell for people, if you haven't clicked on the link and just put in again just your name and email, just for information to look through the data insights. I think constantly reading and updating. This is the industry that I'm always learning. I'm sure you're the same, Paul. Has there been something that's fascinated you the most in terms of either growth or data, in terms of unexpectedness of? We all knew e-commerce was going to grow. Is there a specific nature of which brands are growing or be more successful than you might have thought? Again, even as recently as a year or two ago, what's the most surprising nature right now for you?
I mean, I think the thing over the past year or two, I would say, is, if you look beyond 2 years ago, you looked at things that were novelty, had a novelty factor, as things that had a good opportunity in e-commerce, things that changed the way that a consumer did something or another with it, that's borne out in a product. A new kind of mattress, a new way to buy eyeglasses, a new, something new. I think the big surprise over the last several years, again, driven by the pandemic, is that the growth of e-commerce is really being driven by shelf-stable grocery and health and beauty and several other categories. Furniture is another one that that are real leaders in terms of category growth, which you looked a few years ago and it was more about incremental utility of products and how product disruption was happening. The thing that's very interesting today and looking at the past 2 years is, it's ketchup and right.
Right.
And not a new kind of ketchup. It's ketchup, which is very interesting.
Well, it's, and going back to our first main point of like how our brand's growing right now, it's just the nature of which we've become dependent. I say we, like almost every person this is touched in one way, shape, or form. Business owners are finding ways to, again, just if they weren't already, they're finding ways to take their business online, to be operational in just the capacity of which you can't go through a store and just touch and feel things as much as you could in the past, or maybe want to in the past. Though be it you can for lots of places, this is just a place for you to kind of open your eyes and see there's much more opportunity out there. And it's almost like a shakeup and breaking down almost these walls that we've had across our eyes and this narrow line focus. So you got to crack it open a little bit more. So you see the sunshine crack through and say, maybe I can operate in Canada, or this product could be great in Germany, for example. On an international perspective, has there been more of a cross-border nature of which you've kind of seen of, hey, my product is not just relevant to just locally in my community, but it's actually applicable to communities across the world? What's been that conversation like with your team and your clients as well?
I mean, definitely international is a big focus, and I would say the larger the company, the more focused they are on the incremental growth that can be had in various markets throughout the world. So, you look at traditional CPG businesses and you see where are they looking for growth? They're not looking necessarily always for growth in the US. They're looking for, where can I have the biggest incremental opportunity? But I would also say digital first marketplace brands are also seeing this opportunity too. So we just see it all over, that international is a great opportunity.
So kind of wrapping up in our time that we have together, is there, what are you really focused on for the, not just the remaining of the year, but what you and your team are going to be really focused on to come to light in 2022? What's that main, we have to get this done this next year because this is where the future of e-commerce is going. This is where native brands that are starting online, they're going to need our help and support with this. What is that thing that you guys are really focused on to bring in light?
Yep. So I think, the thing for us, it always starts with data chaos, getting to data clarity. And that is a pretty big process. On the back end, we make it easy for our clients, but on the back end, it's pulling in more and more channels and more marketing channels and more information around logistics, et cetera, so that data can be surfaced, normalized, enhanced. And then of course, you add the AI on top of that, that's driving the insight generation and sort of the control instructions to the end user. So, for us, what we're focused on in 2022 is making sure that our clients are data ready, that their e-commerce data is ready for a world where things are very multi-channel and happening very, very fast, where assortment is changing faster, marketing is changing faster, and an understanding of what's happening on the logistics side of the world is all happening faster and faster.
Right. We are the speedboats and not the freighters in this capacity of you have to change with the different waves and you have to be able to pivot at a moment's notice. And it's easy as an entrepreneur online. It may not be for a top 100 company to be able to move that quickly, but that's kind of the pro as being an online entrepreneur as well. So that being said, Paul, I know we talked about so many different things, and I know you're a busy man too. So where are the ways that people can get in touch with you, or your team or your company? And then also one more time that we can highlight that link that we were talking about for Empowered E-commerce report that you guys put out there.
Sure. So the best way to get in touch with us is to go to tradeswell.com and click to get in touch with us, and we'll get back to you very quickly. We're a team that likes to move fast, and we will follow up for sure. For the research report, it's tradeswell.com/empowered-e-commerce. And so hopefully you'll appreciate that report. But also what I'll say is we have, just from this research we did, there are other storylines that we'll be publishing in Q1 around a little bit of, hey, big versus small, how are things shaping up, and CPG versus non-CPG. And there's also another storyline around more junior employees who are running e-commerce at their company versus more senior employees. And one's more focused on supply, one's more focused on demand, and one's more focused on incredibly tactical campaign management and things like that. And another is really focused more on profitability and how all of that works. So we're excited to also put that out, and we'd love to come back and share that with you, Ryan.
That'd be great
when that time comes.
Yeah, absolutely. Put me on the docket for early 2022, and I can thumb through it too. I have a lot of reports I've been reading, like from the acquisition, the capital, and that's put into this marketplace, marketplaces and brands in general. To your report, there's lots of reports to thumb through, but they're all good. It's actionable. They're snapshots of where things are, and it paints a really nice picture. So this is really cool and actionable insight to come off almost like a 4-day weekend of just like relaxing. I need to start getting my data ready for myself in early 2022. So, but Paul, thank you so much again. I apologize again publicly on this for getting our dates kind of double booked.
Don't worry.
Super important that we got you on here to kind of go through these data points, and really excited again. We already connected over the book that you have in your background of Grit by Angela Duckworth. So lots of great things that on a Monday, not so bad, I would think, coming off of a turkey weekend and it being today a crazy day. I guess my final thought today, is there anything that you're hankering to buy on the Cyber Monday? You have to let our audience know if there's something that you're going to press buy on today. I've already done it today, so I'm already scared.
Well, having had the kind of sous vide experience of last year and not using that as often as I would like, I think we're looking at the more practical item of an air fryer. So
there you go. I like that.
There you go.
We had a home computer that was purchased today. So as much as we like to do, as many of us are out there, it was just one of those, do we pull the trigger? And today is the day we did it. So air fryer, I love it. Practicality makes sense to me. So very cool. Well, thank you so much, sir, for hopping on in. It was a pleasure to get to know you, and now friend of the show on Crossover Commerce. Thank you so much, Paul Tradeswell, for hopping on today.
All right. Thank you so much.
No problem. And thank you everyone else for hopping on another episode of Crossover Commerce. This is episode 187, I believe. We have an action-packed lineup this week. Again, every day we're going to be going live with some of the best and brightest in the Amazon e-commerce space. Today was no exception. Thank you so much, Paul with Tradeswell. If you have questions, go ahead and check out the links below. We've already linked out to all their different social sites, but also connect with Paul and his team over at Tradeswell. Check them out. There's lots of different insights and availability. If you're starting to grow your brand online, you just need to kind of consolidate those data points to help you build actionable insights to look at where profitability might happen or where there might be a glaring issue in your company. Check it out. It's very actionable information that they're providing, but then also the technology that they are building. Really cool if you're a digitally native brand. I'm Ron Cramer. This is Crossover Commerce. We'll catch you guys tomorrow on another episode of Crossover Commerce. We'll catch you guys next time. Take care.